Okay, today we're going to start with the sing-along because it's Friday. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, but we're going to start with the sing-along today because, hey, you know, sometimes you got to start with a sing-along, and you might know this one. You know it. Talk about stuff here in a minute. You got to sing along. Okay, you don't have to sing along. You don't have to sing along. It's all good. How's it going, guys? Happy Friday. We are having a lot of fun today. This has been a kind of a crazy week for me. I've been finalizing everything with the audiobook and doing a lot of cool stuff with that. The audiobook should be coming out. I was hoping to have the audiobook out by, hopefully, it was going to be out by my birthday next week on Friday, but it's not going to be out that soon. So we were hoping for Christmas and probably not out that soon either, but it should be coming out within, hopefully by New Year's. So keep an eye out for that. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Wim Hof's recent interview with Mikhaila Peterson and Jordan Peterson. And we've got a little bit of, a lot of discussion on that. I've gotten a lot of emails. What do I think about that interview? Probably more than any other interview Wim has done. People ask me about my opinion. Actually, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, but let's just get right into it. Good to see you guys. Hey, Simple Jim, Sabrina, nice to have you here. And Tristan, how are we doing? Yo, Tristan. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Wim Hof's recent interview. What's up, Leif? Or is it Leif? I'm sorry. It's probably Leif. I assume it's Leif. Sabrina's here. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about Wim Hof's interview on the Mikhaila Peterson show. And here's the cool thing. So let's just face it, right? So a lot of times, Wim has been on a lot of interviews. And a lot of times I get emails saying, well, I wish he would have said this. I wish he would have said it this way. It's one of those things where it's funny because whenever you have these people that you really admire and that maybe even a hero or somebody like that, a lot of times we have this vision in our head of what the ideal interview is going to be like. And we kind of hype it up. And of course, now Jordan Peterson, a lot of people know who Jordan Peterson is. Jordan Peterson is one of those that some people love, some people hate him. For me, I first heard about Jordan Peterson. When was that? My wife introduced me to Jordan Peterson, and it was during probably one of the worst parts of our lives. We were having it was 2017 was just a terrible, terrible year. It was one of those years where it was a wonderful year, but it was also a bad year in that the thing that caused us the most suffering was also something that I don't really want to have to go all into it, but basically we suffered a huge loss that year, huge loss and it was one of those things where you knew you were going to suffer that loss for months. And it wasn't, and not to say that losing a loved one, like dying and something like that, is not awful, but it wasn't that. It was just a tough situation. Okay, I'll tell you. It was, my wife and I were about to adopt two beautiful little girls. And, we had them in our home for, almost a whole year, thinking we were going to be able to adopt them. And at the last minute, the judge changed their mind, and we weren't able to. And so it was just a really tough thing. It was a really hard time for us to go through. And this is also my first year of being a Wim Hof method instructor. I was getting into the world of positive thinking and, I was familiar with stoicism as a philosophy. And I was like, okay, so, and you might've seen my video about this. I did a video recently about how there was this girl that emailed me, and hey, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. And she was, still miserable because she was going through some really tough times. And she's like, why isn't Wim Hof method making me happy? And of course, go watch the video. I'm not going to repeat everything in the video, but when you go through tough times, it's natural. I mean, and to have emotions, we're human beings. And these are natural things that are not curses as much as we feel like they are sometimes. And so I was wondering, first of all, okay, why is it I felt like maybe Wim Hof method would just make me not feel sad anymore. And then at the same time, I was like, man, I've been studying that Stoic philosophy. I'm just going to choose not to be sad. Well, it wasn't working. You cry yourself to sleep all the time, and if you've ever experienced loss, it's something where, or if you've ever gone through rough times, right? That it's not like you can I'm just not going to think about it. Or I'm going to this one little trick thing, those things. That's why a lot of times, a lot of this pop philosophy that I see really irritates me. And you see it all over the internet. These, I would say it's like I call them like Instagram philosophers, and not to disparage philosophy on Instagram, because if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I put philosophy on my Instagram. But so much of it is it's kind of half-baked existential philosophy, half-baked. It's basically like your freshman year of college, transcendental stuff where, yeah, it sounds good, but you're just swiping. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to like that. And as soon as you do the like, you just stop thinking about it anymore. And it's not like you actually ponder it or even really get to the bottom of it, right? Well, what's the context of that particular passage? I'd like to learn more, right? So hopefully if you follow me on Instagram, you're looking into these authors, and these philosophers. I've done Erasmus twice, and hopefully you look into Erasmus. He's kind of a weird philosopher guy that he's tickled my fancy a few times. But anyway, getting back to, so my wife and I, we knew probably, I think it was about 3 months before we were going to, have to say goodbye to these little girls. 3 months, right? That we had a pretty good idea, man, something's changed and it looks like things might not go the way we thought they were going to go. And so, I'm an English professor. So, I don't know. Is that what you said? I think he's a professor as well. Oh, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's a professor as well. Yeah. I'm just catching a little bit of what I'm seeing here, but yeah. So the thing is, so my wife brought me, she sent me a link of a lecture from Jordan Peterson, and I watched it, and it was so different from the average video that a person sent me. It was talking about things that I was like, well, wait a minute. This isn't like hit you over the head political. This isn't, so who's on the take here? Most of the time, if there's political pundits, those are the people that get a lot of play, or there's like maybe, health and wellness people and all these things. And so whenever I was listening, it was a lecture on Carl Jung, and I was like, a lot of those things I remembered. Some of the things that he was talking about, he was talking about Nietzsche. He was talking about, it just brought a lot of philosophy and mythology. And a lot of those things I remembered whenever I was in grad school. And I was like, and I really liked those things. But, sadly enough, when you're in grad school, like I went to grad school as an English, specifically to become a professor of English. That was my goal. I knew I really enjoyed. At the time, you guys wouldn't recognize me. At the time, I was this like out of shape, just getting over opioid addiction, beardless. That's the part that would really blow your no beard guy. And it was. I remember learning a lot about that stuff in grad school, but then afterwards I really didn't apply it. And whenever I teach now, I teach mostly, I'll teach college freshmen, college sophomore. So I'm not teaching those really in-depth classes. Like I'll teach a survey of American literature or British literature, or I will teach composition, research, rhetoric. I do teach that, but you kind of just scratch the surface in the college freshman, sophomore levels. Anyway, so I was listening to this guy and I was like, whoa, this guy is talking about how to live your life, how to become an individual, kind of how to grapple with suffering. And that's what really hit me, because I was, at the time, my wife and I were really suffering. And it was a daily thing. In addition to that, we were still taking care of these little girls and trying to live a life. And so that's what really got to me. And so I started listening to more of his lectures. Actually, I remember it was my first really big Wim Hof method workshop, and it was in Indianapolis. And a buddy of mine who was a Wim Hof method instructor who trained with me with the very first class too, Jared Blanton, if you're watching, my friend, I remember we listened to his lectures as we drove home from Indianapolis that night after that is a really big workshop. So it was really intriguing. You didn't really hear many people, discussing these types of things like mythology, deeper meanings of like old religious stories of various religions, various philosophies. So I really was intrigued. And so I read his book, and for me, it's kind of cool. So for me, when I found out Wim Hof and Jordan Peterson were going to have a conversation, it was really exciting for me, because both of them to me were gateway drugs. Wim Hof, of course, I've been around Wim Hof a lot. I've met Jordan Peterson, but I've never really gotten to hang out with Jordan Peterson. Like, I've been sitting shotgun in a car driving around Europe with Wim. With Jordan Peterson, I've met him. I've been to a couple of his lectures, and actually in one of his lectures, I was going to suggest, because I heard he had the autoimmune issues, and I was like, I was raising my hand whenever there were questions. And then there was just so many people with hands up. Eventually, the lecture was over and the question and answer was over. It was back in, well, maybe it was I don't remember. It was like 2018, 2019. So I don't remember when I saw him, but that was at this lecture. I was going to suggest, hey man, you should try Wim Hof method. So anyway, whenever both of these guys were gateway drugs for me. So Wim Hof, of course, I still practice Wim Hof method. If you're a fan of the channel, you're probably a practitioner of the Wim Hof method. But as you probably also know, I get into a lot of different kinds of breath work. I got into all sorts of biohacking, and that was all because of Wim Hof's influence on me. Before that, I really didn't do any of that. And after I trained with Wim and started getting into this kind of space, I was like, wow, there's so much to it. And the same thing was with Jordan Peterson. So after I got into Jordan Peterson for a little bit, it kind of opened me up. I was like, whoa. And so now I'm really into existential philosophy. Now there's other modern philosophers that I really enjoy. Some of them, actually, I don't know if you've not seen the debate with Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson, it wasn't really much of a debate. It was more of like, it was an interesting kind of a thing they had on the monk debates. That was really fun for me because I got into listening to Slavoj Žižek. I'm just really into listening to a lot of different types of philosophies. And I think that it's important to at least hear things out, even if maybe you don't agree with the person, or maybe it's something where, maybe you're really into a certain kind of philosophy, and then later on you put it down. James, you said you saw that debate too. Yeah, in that debate, it was kind of cute. It was one of those things where I didn't really want either one to win or lose, because at that point I had listened to both of them enough. I have not read Slavoj Žižek. The man has written insane amounts. I mean, the guy is very, very well written. I hadn't really read much of him, but I had listened to enough of his stuff that I was like, okay, he makes some good points. And of course, Jordan Peterson makes some good points. And I didn't really I just wanted to see what it would be like for those two guys to get together. And it was kind of funny because Jordan Peterson, he went into it as, okay, this is going to be a debate. And he came out pretty hard and strong about the Communist Manifesto. And then Slavoj Žižek was like, yeah, I don't like the Communist Manifesto either. And so it was more of like they made friends on stage. It was kind of cool. Anyway, so whenever I heard that Wim Hof and Jordan Peterson were going to talk, I was really excited. And so I watched it. And I personally, I've not watched a lot or listened to a lot of Mikhaila Peterson's podcast. So I'm not incredibly familiar with her podcast. But anyway, so I watched it. And so what we have in this particular interview, in that podcast, first of all, it's funny. A lot of people reached out to me. Some of my Patreon members reached out to me. And they're like, Jesse, you need to get a hold of Mikhaila Peterson and explain the Wim Hof method a little bit better. And I was like, no, yeah, the thing is, anytime you see someone you really like go on and talk to someone else maybe that you really like, I think we all have in our mind like the imaginary, that kind of the dream conversation we want them to have. And it was clear to me that Jordan Peterson, he was coming at this from a position of like, hey, I'm a very sick man and I need to see if this can help me. Because man, if you saw it, let me know. Let's see. I've got a few comments here. Hey, Eric's got some kava coming. So yeah, awesome. And let's see, how do you become certified as a Wim Hof method instructor? Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute or later on. And Brandon's here. Good to have you here, man. Okay, but anyway, so a lot of you guys saw the interview. So I think a lot of us were we were looking forward to what actually did eventually start to coalesce, right? Eventually, they started talking about things that they both were interested in. And the interesting thing about this, the reason why I really enjoy, hey, Peter Yurt, he made it. The reason I enjoyed, I still enjoy both Jordan Peterson and Wim Hof is because they're kind of like spirit animals. Wait, hold on. Let me explain. They're like little spirit animals. Like Wim is the spirit animal that is all experience. Feeling is believing, right? That for me it was like, yes, that is so true. How can I really believe something if I don't have some kind of a feeling or some kind of an experiential aspect? And then you have Jordan Peterson, who is an incredibly, I mean, like him or hate him, okay? He's not stupid, right? Very intelligent, very much about, I think, genuinely seeking truth in what is, to me, some of the most interesting concepts in humanity, right? You have religion, mythology, philosophy, how this stuff plays together. How should I build my life? And so I really, it's kind of like, it's not really left brain, right brain, because that's not really a great metaphor, but it's these two, to me, it's kind of like these two ends of the poles, right? Because you want to have that experience. You want to really experience it, be present in the moment. And at the same time, I mean, if you're like me, I also have an enormous amount of need for contemplation and, some kind of a way to decipher, how can I think about this a little bit more deeply? And And so whenever I found out they were going to be talking, that was awesome. And so now, sadly enough, I wish, it's one of those things, I kind of wish, I think Mikhaila Peterson, I think she was a little bit more familiar with the Wim Hof method than Jordan was. I feel like Jordan Peterson just kind of showed up and he had maybe seen a video or two. And I don't feel like he really knew, I'm sorry, you're exactly right. Ice bath is the belly of the beast. No, I mean, there's these really cool parallels. And I think it helps. It's something that can really round a person out, is having these two things, right? But I think Jordan Peterson, he came into it, and you kind of got to watch him do the breathing. And of course, if you're like me, and if you're watching this right now, you're probably very familiar with Wim Hof method. And so it's like, well, he can use a little practice, right? And so, of course, this seems like it's the very first time that he's ever tried it. And so, but Wim was so nice. Wim he really is the nicest guy. Very much present, very much like guiding him on, really encouraging. They did the breath work. Now, after they did one round of the breath work, and it did seem as though, I had a lot of people email me, it seemed like Jordan Peterson, after they did it, was kind of confused as far as, it's kind of hard to, he was kind of confused as far as the sequence, right? How many breaths, and then the breath holds and things like that. And Wim was like, hey man, you call me, but you don't have to call me. The app is free. And so I feel like this could be a real big beginning. And the cool thing is that, at the very end of the interview, that's what Wim was saying too. Now, the part that I think that was probably my favorite is when they started talking about, of course, Wim, if you've been around him, he'll talk a lot about this concept of ancestry, right? Of bringing forth some kind of expunging some of the ancestral stresses and things that we've brought forth. And then, of course, I didn't know about this until the interview, but apparently in Peterson's new book, he's got this whole part about ancestry and stuff. So they got to connect on that. And I think it's really kind of cool because they do come from, both of them have studied, especially like the Eastern religions a lot. And of course, Wim is just incredible. The guy speaks 5 languages. Like, it was really cool this in January to see how many languages he could speak pretty fluently, just kind of, and he's studied a lot of religions too. So it's kind of cool, all of these mythologies, all of these philosophies coalescing. And you had this pretty cool, this talk with these two people who arrived at this place completely different. And I love how Wim was talking about it. He's like, yeah, I was a high school dropout. Now at the same time, Wim might be a high school dropout or whatever, but he's incredibly smart. Like, I've been around the guy enough to know that he's a very intelligent person. One time we were leading people through a breathwork session and he started quoting Shakespeare. And of course, being an English professor, I'm like, oh dude, he's quoting Shakespeare. And so the man's well read. And so, but he's coming from it. He's very experiential. You have Jordan Peterson's very much, intellectual, clinical, that kind of a thing. And they're coming together. Now, the beauty, what's really kind of what I really hope to see is this thing somehow maybe move forward. And hopefully they work together more in the future, because one of the things, and I'm mentioning my friend Jared again, but I remember when we first started Wim Hof method, when we first started really engaging with cold exposure, especially, I don't know what it is, that cold exposure, but of course the breath work too, right? Really going deep into breath work, really going deep into the cold exposure. We didn't know each other before we met in LA, me and Jared. We met in LA whenever we first started training with Wim back in May of 2016. And we both commented about how it felt like we were pulling up something ancient, something primal, something deep inside was being tapped into. We had that feeling. And then and then, that was without any cueing, or that's before we met Wim or anything like that. And back then in 2016, the only interview that Wim Hof had done, as far as I know, that was of any kind of like renown, in 2016, May of 2016, I think he had done maybe his first Joe Rogan podcast. And I think I know for a fact that he had done the Vice documentary, because a lot of people, that's how they found out about Wim Hof. But yeah, so anyway, so there's this whole point, this whole aspect of the experiential and the intellectual kind of marrying together. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. I hope they do another session together. A few of my Patreon people and then some other emails, they were like, Jesse, you got to reach out. You got to explain it a little bit more. I am not, Wim is the master of his method. I'm a teacher, and so I think this is going to be a really cool thing that goes forward. So anyway, that was kind of my take on it. I was going to make a video on it, but I was like, hey, this would be great. It's fun. It's kind of fun to have some comments. And so anyway, it's kind of fun to see what you guys have to say. Let's see here. Let's see here. Now they're popping up. Okay. So I thought Jordan Peterson was very interested in knowing how to do Wim Hof method breathing properly, which is promising. Yeah, Daniel, I agree. And really, if there's anybody that can really use Wim Hof method, it seems to be him. I don't fully understand his condition. And I know that whenever he was doing his 12 Rules for Life tour, I know that he was doing, he had issues then. And I remember on the Joe Rogan podcast, he talked about how he ate the carnivore diet, and that's how he was able to sustain, his health at that time. And apparently he had a bad reaction, or something happened with a medication he was taking. And then he went to Russia, and then he almost died. And I mean, it's been a crazy year or so for him. And so I think I would love to see on Instagram or on one of Jordan Peterson's outlets. And when it happens, share it with me, and or share it around. I would love to see him in an ice bath. Can you imagine that? Just think, that little, he's lost a lot of weight since his early videos that I've seen him do lectures. I'd love to see him in an ice bath. I'd love to see this. I'd love to see Wim Hof and Jordan Peterson practicing together. Because I just think, that's just awesome. That's just good stuff all the way around. I feel like it's important to have a healthy marriage of experiential, like your body mind experience with the with intelligence, right? Now, whether or not you like Jordan Peterson or agree with him or anything like that, I don't really even care, right? And I think some people are very brand name people, like I'm a so-and-so fan, right? For me, I think it's just, I'm just happy whenever people are talking about things that matter and that aren't just politics and, gossip and celeb news. I love, and I hope I see more people who are wanting to talk about, how should we live? Philosophers of our day. So it doesn't have to be what he says. It can be whatever. But I think those are the kind of people I would like to see propagate more in this new, the world that we live in, as opposed to, nothing against the Kardashians, but you know what I'm saying? Like we have we have way too much mindless entertainment, and it's so nice to see intellectuals, discussing things. And I don't have to agree with a person 100% or at all in order to respect a person and say, okay, this is a good conversation that we're having. Okay, so I did see someone says something about aliens. And Jonathan Holmes says, whoa, what was the story about aliens? So switching topics significantly here, but there's all these stories that are coming out about aliens, and the only thing I think the big thing that now, I guess it wouldn't be YouTube, right? If we didn't talk about aliens. Actually, whenever I first found out about Wim Hof, I was surfing the weird side of YouTube and the weird side of the internet. And Kara, you came at the right time. We're talking aliens. But I was searching the weird side of the internet, and that's whenever I stumbled on Wim Hof. And it was alien. It was that kind of stuff. But so NBC News, I saw an article yesterday, NBC News. And so you've always seen alien stuff on the internet, but normally you don't see the major news sources talking about it. And they keep on talking about how there's like a galactic federation. And I got to say, I've always wanted to be a spaceship captain. So maybe, but I was listening to, I think it was Bloomberg Radio or something. It was one of the XM radio stations that I was listening to, and they were talking about it. And as I looked over off of this, as I was driving, I drove by a homeless man, and I started to think about, maybe, sometimes people talk about, if we all looked at each other and say, there's another human being. So often now, one of the mottos of the channel is to go out and be kind to one another. And it's so easy not to look at other people as other people. It's so easy. Just to kind of devalue other people. And I don't know, maybe if we started to believe that aliens are watching us, maybe we would, band together and say, well, there's another person. We got to keep the humans. We got to keep the humans safe. I don't know. Okay. And let's see here. And now we're talking about DMT. So I don't know. The thing is, when you look at other people, it's so easy to not see someone. It's so easy for us to not value other people. And actually, I was talking about being an English professor, and I was teaching Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson this semester. And, the Transcendentalists, they talk about one of the Transcendentalism has many different schools of thought, but Ralph Waldo Emerson, he had a poem called The Oversoul. And it was this concept that all of us basically are expressions of the same being, and that whenever you see someone else, you're actually seeing yourself just expressed as a different person. And some scholars have talked about how can you treat another person like the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How can you do that unless you really believe that person is you? There really is someone there that is a reflection of you. I don't know. The alien stuff, what do you guys think? You guys think there's aliens out there? I don't know. Plenty of stars out there. Let's see here. Wasn't there a guy who went on Rogan talking about, let's see, Zook Master says, wasn't there a guy going on Rogan talking about he would hold meditations to summon aliens? I would not be surprised. So there's all kinds of, the thing is, there's all kinds of weirdness, right? And it's really hard sometimes. I'm open to new ideas, but so often it's like, yeah, I don't think I have to stay open to these ideas for all that long. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that's just a crazy idea. And I don't know. And the thing is, I've been alive long enough. Next week is my birthday. Okay. Next week, we really are having a sing along. Okay. I'm going to make you have a sing along with me, but come anyway. But like, I've been alive long enough to know that I don't know anything. And so let's see here. Let's see, what do we got here? I'm going to read some comments here. Got comments going crazy. So got some people thinking there are. So KR is a believer. Stranded's not. I think we're living in a simulation. Ooh, James. There we go. See, this is such an awesome crowd. This crowd is really interesting people. Please talk more often about English literature. I will be happy to do that. I don't want to bore you, but I think it's fascinating, right? So the thing that, and I teach a lot of college freshmen and sophomore, and like, for instance, this semester, the art of basically how to use language and communication in general, right? And most of us need it all the time. Obviously, and the way I sell it to my students is, hey, do you want to learn how to win an argument? Learn rhetoric. Or do you want to learn how to not be taken advantage of by people and salespeople and politicians? And so, but yeah, in American literature, we've been covering a lot of my favorite philosophies. Transcendentalism is one of my favorite philosophies. Let's see here. Jeremy McGregor says, I did DMT. I went to Egypt, and there were walking cat monks with rubies and diamonds and emeralds in their foreheads over their third eyes. Was that the like during your DMT? Was that something that you saw? See, Jackson Taylor, if we looked at life like there were invisible aliens looking out for us, we have that. It's called religion, bud. All right, bud. Let's see here. Very good point. Let's see here. I'm skipping through here. Chuck Casper said, New York City, Chuck. I think the Concord, Massachusetts transcendentalists were greatly inspired by, yeah, they were non-dualism. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, law of attraction, thoughts. I don't know. I think a lot of people make a lot about law of attraction. It's cool for a lot of people. It's not something, that I personally get into myself when it comes to law of attraction. It's, I'm more of a, and the thing is, I think most of the time, criticisms of that I would make of it probably would be out of ignorance of it. I remember whenever like The Secret came out and, a lot of those things. So, it's not my thing, but I don't have anything against it. Got some other people who read The Oversoul. Let's see. Water always finds its level, or show me the Bindi water in the universe physics department. I'm not sure what that means. Yes, during the DM trip. Okay, so that was during a DMT trip. Let's see. Let's see here. So that was an authentic. Wait a minute. Hey, that was an authentic bud, not a sarcastic one. Good, thank you. I'm glad you actually clarified that. I'm glad you clarified that, my friend. Let's see, Wim Hof method. Let's see here. Jeremy McGracker says, never had a DMT trip with Wim Hof method, Wim says. So, yeah, there was a, so altered state breathing is something that, theoretically, it's a way to produce DMT whenever you do breath work. We don't really know, though, exactly if that's happening, and there's reasons. It's hard to measure if you've produce DMT because it's so fleeting in the brain. So all I know is that I have experienced some pretty crazy, amazing things doing altered state breath work. And the thing is, that's why it should not be dabbled with. Like it's not like, and I've said this before. I don't think you should just dabble with some of these deeper things when it comes to when it comes to psychedelics and things like that. I did a lot of those when I was younger. I don't see myself ever doing those again. Not because I think they're evil or wrong, or it's just not for me. But when it comes to altered state breathing, I like altered state breathing because it's something where I'm not making an 8-hour commitment, you know what I mean? Or a 24-hour commitment, really, because you got all the recovery time and all that stuff. I like altered state breathing because it's very accessible. It's legal. I can do it in my own home, and I could go drive if I wanted to. And so altered state breath work, not to mention, you're actually doing something really good for your body because I mean, in a way, because you're doing, at least you're practicing a proper breath wave. Hopefully you don't have to. That's the thing about altered state breathing. You don't even have to practice a proper breath wave, but that is something that's why I say that there's a lot of ways to get there. And there are some people who are very well-meaning, who are really trying to do good. They're like, man, I experienced this altered state. I think it's amazing. I think it's great. I want to share it with everybody, but they're not really skilled in teaching. They've not really had any kind of mentorship, and they've not seen some of the crazy things that people can have happen whenever they do altered state breath work. So I would say, I am going to actually, I don't know, I do have a breath mastery class that I just rolled out. I have shared it on my Facebook, and I'm just kind of slowly spreading it. And of course, if you're in my Patreon club, you've already known about this for like 2 weeks now. But at the very end, I am going to go over altered state breath work and do what I'm going to call the microdose of altered state breath work with you. I always feel more comfortable when I lead altered state breath work, I feel much more comfortable having the person with me physically there. It's whenever the pandemic hit, it was really, I had a lot of people reach out to me wanting to do altered state. And I was like, man, I don't think I can do that virtually. And then eventually I had a client who he and I had been working together long enough that I was like, okay, I trust this guy to follow my directions, to be really safe about it. And he got his wife to be a sitter with him. So I believe it's always important to have someone to sit with you who is not weirded out by breath work. First of all, if it's like your brother who is like, thinks you're joining some weird cult, then it's not a good thing. They're just going to look at you weird. It's going to ruin your whole vibe. But if it's something where like he and his wife was totally, aware of what they were, she was into it too, so she was just there just in case he had a weird reaction, then I could give her some instructions and to help him calm down. He had a great time. And so then from then on, I started kind of dabbling in it. I always want to have a person with a sitter though. And that's why, I recommend, I know there's a lot of things on YouTube and online that promise to give you a state of DMT, and it's possible they might. A lot of these are just kind of like weird, hey, ooh, listen to the music and look at the lights. But some of them are probably, legit. And it's important to be careful. Just, have a person sit with you, just who is cool, who knows what's going on, and because it can be really jarring to have an altered state experience. And it can hit you really suddenly and really, really strong. So it's nice to have someone there just to kind of be with you. Let's see here. Do my students know I have a YouTube channel? Yeah, one of them does. He's on most of these Fridays. A lot of times he's on Friday and he'll comment. I don't tell my students, hey guys, check me out on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. I don't do any of that. But I if they ask me about it, I'm like, yeah, definitely, if you want to look at it, that's fine. But I don't encourage them to I don't push my my other life onto them. However, what I generally do is I try to give them advice. If you guys have read my book, I talk about it a little bit in A Practical Guide to Breath Work. I do a little bit of, I just try to give them good advice. I remember being 18 years old, 18 to 20, and how just discombobulating that can be. And really, when it comes down to it, education is something that we have to address the fact that the world that we live in today is different than the way education was designed. Education itself was designed, the way we look at education, it was designed during the Industrial Revolution. So, and literally it was designed to make good workers for a factory, so it's just kind of like, that was the original point of education, is to make good employees. And so now we've used that same model, and now it's in it just doesn't necessarily work anymore. Now, for some people it works perfectly, and we really do try to make it work within the educational field. But being able to handle your emotions is something that I see a lot of young people, a lot of my students have problems, governing their emotions, just like a lot of my coworkers, just like a lot of your friends. And, a lot of us have those problems, just like I had before I did some seeking and I had to find, right. And so I try to give them tips on how to better govern their emotions. I try to, a lot of it is just really basic stuff. Like, you shouldn't, be staying up all night and just eating sugar O's for every meal. A lot of times whenever, I don't know, you guys, if you went to college, you might have moved away from home. So it's the first time ever that you're in charge of feeding yourself, taking care of yourself, and all these things. So you don't have anybody to tell you to go to sleep, or to, a lot of these things that, sadly enough, 18-year-olds should know. But a lot of times, we're kids, right? So, and this is stuff that Carl Jung talks about when it comes to individuation, the extended adolescence that we experience as a result of school, and how, oftentimes we find ourselves not wanting to mature or grow up or take advantage of reality. So, hey, what's up, Alex? Nice to have you here. But anyway, so a lot of times I'll recommend things. A lot of it is stuff they already should know, or low-hanging fruit that anybody can probably pick up just in a day. Like, you're probably like, when I was in college, we had the internet, but we didn't have streaming video like we have now. We didn't have, we had video games. And I remember there was this one girlfriend I had in college, and we'd been together for we've been pretty serious. And one Christmas she was like, I'm going to get you a video game system. I was like, don't give me a video game system, because I will like it so much that I want to play it all the time, and then we'll break up. And I don't know if she did it on purpose. So to this day, I'm not really sure, but she got me a video game system, and I played it all the time, and it ruined our relationship. And so I think there's a lot of life in that age. A lot of what we do during that age is self-sabotaging, and it's out of a sense of, okay, I don't really want to. And what Jung says is that basically you have to prove to yourself, right? A person's going to stay in that fantasy land as much as they can, right? Because if you think of most of society, right, we're addicted to movies and video games and porn and all these things, all these fantasies. And like Jung says, you have to convince yourself that the real world has more to offer you than the fantasy world does. And that's really tough with how much we put into entertainment and fantasies, right? And these fantasies that we have nowadays are incredibly well constructed, and they know how to work all of those brain chemicals and keep you hooked. And so I think that's a very difficult thing for young people to overcome. It was hard for me to overcome. And so what I try to do with my students is I try to, little nudges, because I don't want to be that, I'm not that professor that's like, I'm going to be your dad now. I'll be a friendly person in your life. I will try to give you friendly nudges, but that's about it. Let's see here. We got all kinds of stuff here. I'll start with, Tammy says, how do you find your purpose? Oh, that's a good question. And the thing is, when it comes to finding your purpose, I think it's a question of, it's not always a question of following your passion. It's also thinking about, I think it's about resetting your paradigm, because oftentimes we the way we look at things is like, okay, life is happening to me, or or I'm just a cog in this major thing that, I don't have any choice. And I think the first step to finding your purpose is gratitude. And it's a gratitude that I have choices. I have choices over my life, and I can make decisions. If you guys were here in the beginning of this live, I've had a lot of, I've gone through some really bad times, but knowing that you do have choices, and you have, I think, and Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, and if you're French, I'm sorry, I pronounce it Sartre, or I know it's supposed to be pronounced like Sartre or something like that, but I'm Midwestern American. But he talks about how we have a lot more freedom than what we even want to admit that we have. And because when we don't admit, whenever we pretend that we don't have freedom, then we let ourselves off the hook for making the decisions that we need to make about our lives. And so being grateful for the fact that we have a lot of freedom, we can make decisions, I think is the first step to finding our purpose. And, I think sometimes it does require kind of reframing things. And maybe we have more than one purpose, and maybe there's not any one specific purpose. Maybe there's a lot of things that you're supposed to do. I'm still searching, right? I don't know how it all ends, but I think being open and just being willing to take the next step is the best possible choice. Let's see here. Let's see. Jeremy makes a cool point. In my opinion, man only thinks he has found his purpose, but you cannot understand God's greater glory for all of us. So that's one of the, it's kind of a difficult question as far as like, how would you even know, right? What is your purpose? So, I think the best thing we can do is wake up every morning, grateful that we got to wake up every morning, and approach the decisions and the choices that we have with as much gratitude as possible, and not worry so much about will this be that decision that leads me to my purpose? Is just looking at each day, one day at a time. And at the same time, being mindful that these days do add up, and over time, life will add up. And eventually you're going to be 40, like I'm going to be next week. Dude. So it's weird. I think I stunted my development early on in life with whenever I had my issues. And maybe I don't feel like I feel like I should be wiser at this point in my life. When I'm 40, I always felt like a 40-year-old man. You've got it figured out at 40. Let's see here. Okay. YXC, a lot of consonants together. Says, hi, Jesse. I've done cold exposure for a while, but still my fingers often go numb later on. After I'm out, some of my fingers will go pale and I cannot feel them. Any advice you could give me? Thank you. Okay, yeah. You've got Raynaud's syndrome. So Raynaud's syndrome is exactly what you're describing there. So Raynaud's syndrome is whenever your blood vessels will close abruptly and they will have a difficulty opening up. Raynaud's syndrome is a thing that I've seen a lot, and it's not going to hurt you, but go ahead and when that happens, put your hands in warm water. You're not going to hurt anything. Okay. You're not hurting your cold adaptation or anything like that. Warm them up, put them next to don't put them in the fire, right? But if you have a fireplace, it's okay to, warm them up to or the heater or whatever, warm those suckers up. And then if you go on outside for like an outdoor exposure, just be extra mindful, because we don't want you to have that exposed to the cold for long periods of time, because lack of circulation in a certain part of your in your hand or wherever you're having Raynaud's syndrome, over a long period of time in extreme cold can lead to a frostbite. So you're a little more susceptible to frostbite in those cases. Let's see what else we got going on here. I love that. Chuck Casper says, finding your purpose, maybe asking how you can be the best service to others. I love that, my friend. That's so good. Let's see. Do you know anything about stoicism? Is it as good as they say? So, okay. So Tan May asked that question, and I was talking about this earlier. And this is my opinion on stoicism and just philosophy in general. Okay. So what was it? I forget who said, if you were ever to study philosophy, you have to be willing to look stupid or feel stupid or say absurd things. Or I forget exactly what the quote is, but I think stoicism has a lot of value to it. And the biggest value, I think, is the self-discipline of your emotions. So stoicism is all about domesticating your emotions. And when you domesticate your emotions, you're not at their whims quite so much. Now, what some people see as stoicism, I disagree with. So there's some people see stoicism as a complete shedding of emotions, totally. Like, I'm just not going to have emotions anymore, man. And that's not really it. It's at first what stoicism seems like, and what a lot of scholars do actually talk about stoicism as such. But stoicism is more about domesticating those emotions, knowing full well that there's no way that you should always feel emotions. It's just you want to be able to try to keep them under control. And so, yeah, it's a great school of philosophy. I would consider myself a toolbox philosopher, or not. I'm not necessarily a philosopher myself, but when it comes to a student of philosophy, basically that's one school of philosophy, but that's not the only school. There's multiple schools of philosophy, and I think there's a lot to be learned from all of them. Let's see. We got some other things. Ryan Holiday has a great book about stoicism. I think that's a really good modern day explanation of stoicism. The Obstacle is the Way, I believe, is the name of that book. Let's see. Epicurus is cooler. Epicurus is pretty cool. Let's see. Okay. So yeah. Let's see, KR, wow, I think I would make a great philosopher. Hey, man, we should all be thinking in philosophical ways, right? We should all be thinking about life. To go through life and just think about which flavor of ice cream is better and what am I going to watch on television tonight. You're not really fully participating. And that's just my particular point of view. I think full participation in life requires contemplation. And so sometimes that means studying other people's contemplations, and sometimes that means contemplating yourself. Let's see. What if your purpose is to be a simple hedonist? Well, if your purpose is to be a simple hedonist, then hey, you're going to try to avoid pain and increase pleasure, and try to live in somewhere in that balance. Shedding all emotion is absolutely not stoic. It's about exactly. Thank you, Eric. That's a very good point. It is about making better judgments and trying to tame the emotions. You can't eliminate them. Raynaud's, yeah. Andrew says wear gloves when doing cold exposures and a hat, because a lot of times your ears will get the Raynaud's will hit the ears as well. So Dax says he's like a Vulcan. Actually, yeah, that's one of the funny things, if you're a fan of Star Trek, which I grew up as a nerd watching Star Trek, and I'll still watch Star Trek now and then. But yeah, you've got the Vulcans. I think the Vulcans were supposed to represent Greek, like the Greek civilization, and the humans were the Roman civilization or something like that, or the Romulans were Roman civilization. Let's see. If humans had fur, Wim Hof method would be overrated. Possibly. Let's see here. So V. Thomas has not seen the interview yet. Hey, watch the interview. It's a fun interview. And it's very Wim Hof. It's very Wim Hof to compliment a person on their couch midway through a conversation, which he does. Spoiler alert. I love that about Wim, is that, you can be talking about something pretty in depth, and then he just happens to want to give you a compliment about, your shirt or something like that. And he'll absolutely do that. Let's see here. Okay. So KR says, what do you recommend for someone beginning studying philosophy? Philosophize this. Easy. That's an easy answer. Go to, let's see who asked that question. KR asked if you want to start studying philosophy. Two things. First of all, don't read the original texts. If you're starting philosophy, if you're starting out reading philosophy and you start by reading original texts, you will hate philosophy. And this is coming, I'm just saying, I want you to love philosophy because I want everybody to love philosophy. But I think that the best way to listen, if you listen to Philosophize This, it's a podcast. He's amazing. Stephen West is just an amazing podcaster. He is on my list of people who I want to meet someday, because he makes it so understandable, and he's even got a pretty good sense of humor about it too. So if you look up the podcast Philosophize This, that's my best suggestion. And then second of all, don't read original texts until after you know what those original texts are supposed to mean. And I would never give that advice for literature or religion or just about anything. But philosophers are incredibly verbose. They love, especially once you get to some of the best philosophers, really, once you get to existentialists, oh my God, transcendentalists. Transcendentalists are fun, and you feel like you get them, and then you're like, oh, wow, I was missing out on a lot. So I would say start with Philosophize This, then read commentary or summations about these philosophers, then pick an author or a philosopher that you think you're going to like, and then pick what people would, then find someone or find a recommendation, what the easiest to understand text is going to be. Soren Kierkegaard is one of my favorite philosophers. Soren Kierkegaard, I made the mistake of reading On Anxiety. That was my first thing. I knew some of what he had talked about, but I hadn't really taken the advice that I just gave you. So I read On Anxiety, and I'm just telling you, my eyes were just bleeding at the end. It was not a fun thing. Oh man. Let's see here. So, and again, don't apply that. That applies to philosophy. I would not apply that to everything else. I would say, but get a basic handle before you deep dive into the deep stuff. So V. Thomas says, if you want to love yoga, don't read Sanskrit. That's not what I'm talking about. If you want to love yoga, just start though. I mean, you can't just suddenly be in the depths. So go to a yoga class, see if it's for you, right? And maybe they're saying up dog, down dog. That's cool. Get into it. And if after a few months you want to get deeper, then you go deeper. I'm just saying you want to find a good starting point that's not going to be overwhelming. That's really it's just like anything else. It's kind of like ice bathing, right? I wouldn't throw you into an ice bath for 5 minutes on your first time to do cold exposure. I would want to gradually get you in. Oh my God. So Eric's well read. Yeah. Oh my God. I made it. I don't know how far into Leviathan, but it was pretty much not far from Hobbes. So I have no real desire to read that. But yeah, Eric, the first thing I read from Kierkegaard was On Anxiety, and it was not great. One guitar is missing from the wall. Maiku, that is because it is right here. Let's see here. What kind of meditation is your favorite or most beneficial to you? I practice multiple different kinds of meditation. There is a Eastern Orthodox meditation I got into called hesychasm. That's pretty cool. The other kind of meditation is simply observing meditation, where you just sit there and you observe your breath, both of which are awesome. What's the best meditation for opening your third eye? Just meditate. Just meditate. And you're going to start to, I'm not an expert. I don't really, and that, like, when it comes to making claims like that, I don't get into those types of claims myself. But when it comes to improving to becoming more in touch with yourself and your inner self, and becoming more grounded and level-headed, just find a way to meditate. Some people, they're like, go to the Headspace app. Some people do breath work. Other people just sit and do silent meditation. So what's the best way to learn acoustic guitar? Let's see. The best way to learn acoustic guitar is to have a crush on a girl. No. The best way to learn acoustic, any kind of guitar, is to want to play and find a song, and you want to play that and learn that song, learn the next song, learn the next song. And before you know it, you've learned 5 or 6 chords and go from there. Guys, I really want to thank you for being here. This has been a lot of fun, great conversation, and really excellent comments. It sounds like we've got a lot of really interesting people in this tribe, and I really do appreciate you being here. I did have an email that I was going to read. It was a person who was wanting to help the channel. I always love emails like that, so I appreciate it. He said he was wanting to help the channel, but he was in college, didn't have any money, so he couldn't join the Patreon. And I can't give a discount. Like, Patreon doesn't even offer that. And so if you want to help the channel, I appreciate that. Like, subscribe, share videos. If you watch the video all the way through, it helps the algorithm. So all of those things help. So I will play you out. We'll do a sing along if you want to stay. If you don't, guys, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to play No Woman, No Cry and just enjoy that. So if you guys every week, 2:00 next week, 2:00 Eastern Standard Time, I will be here. If you want to sing along with me, sing along. Little sister, don't shed no tears. Mama, no cry. I remember when we used to sing in the government wearing trench town. And Georgie, like the firelight as we go through the night. Here's coming my favorite part coming up. And we'll come in porridge, of which I'll share with you. Here it comes. My feet is my only carriage, so I got to push on through while I'm gone. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Gonna take an ice bath tonight. Gonna take an ice bath tonight. No woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. Guys, love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. I will be here next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you haven't joined the Patreon Club, check out the Patreon Club. I'll be putting the links below later on. Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy Friday. Blessings. Good vibes. Happiness to everybody. Don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another. Bye-bye.